Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop Fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. I just had some Hood strawberries in my fresh strawberry ice cream made in my kitchen. It was delightful. Can you say that, Desert Boy?
How does that relate to a movie?
Because you brought up Mount Hood. I'm not even talking about Mount Hood. I'm talking about Mount St. Helens.
Oh, Mount Hood, Helens.
Very different places, Andy. What did you see? You saw some things.
So we went and did a little a pair of films. We did a little a duo of love and friendship. the new Kate Beckinsale movie.
Terrific, wasn't it?
And we saw, yes, it was terrific. And we saw The Lobster.
Oh,
the
equally
Colin
terrific.
Farrell film,
Please.
Absolutely loved. Just really, that's definitely one worth talking a lot about afterward. And then, just to kind of complete the trilogy, since we had seen a Kate Beckinsale film and a Colin Farrell film, I said, hey, let's rent Total Recall. Since it's got both of them in it. It's like a little trifecta.
You had not seen it.
I hadn't. I had not seen it.
Dear.
And I said, well, we should see it. It's not going to be as good, but let's watch it anyway. And so my wife slept through pretty much the whole thing. I thought it was pretty unnecessary. I didn't hate it, but, I really love the first one. And this one was like, I don't know what they were trying to do here. And even the nods to the first one just felt like they were trying to find ways to wedge them in.
It's all about context, that version. If it's late one night and you are alone and you are probably nursing a fever, you are going to love that movie and it's going to be perfect and it's fine. That's good. I have to say, I enjoyed watching that movie. It's a fun little romp if you're not, if you didn't pay $12 for it.
It's fine if you just separate it from Total Recall.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you really need to divorce those two. I mean, and it's fine. I mean, I liked the bit about the giant elevator through the planet. And
that was clever.
The big, climactic battle on it and stuff. I mean, it was an interesting little sci-fi twist. It wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but I still thought that was nice. I mean, I missed Mars, but at least they did something a little different, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, so anyway, but that was my trilogy. Lobster, I would say, is my favorite of the three, followed pretty closely by Love and Friendship, and then way down below would be Total Recall.
But you didn't manage to see Sing Street?
The timing for it was not working for me. It's only playing in one theater, and the timing just did not favor me. So
I was not able to do that either, as evidenced by my X-Men experience. But I really, really want to, and I'll tell you, the music is fantastic. If you haven't checked out this soundtrack, the music that they wrote for the thing, it is so perfectly of a piece for the 80s, like garage band. I can't get over it. It fits right in there with The Cure and Duran Duran, and it's just perfect. It's just perfect.
Wow.
And you will absolutely be humming this music. And I haven't even seen the movie, and we really enjoy it. It has become a regular sort of background track for us here.
It's all original, right? Or do they do covers of other bands?
Well, I don't know about the movie, but in the soundtrack there are a couple of tracks that are not from the band Sing Street that are original, and a couple, and so when you listen, like The Cure is on there, and let's see. Anyway, there are a couple that are not on there. Most of it is Sing Street is original stuff, and it's so sort of peppered in there. You listen to it, it's like you can't even tell the difference. It feels like it's all of the era.
Well, I need to see that one. Definitely need to. But unfortunately, I think the show times are getting narrower and narrower here, so I'm probably going to have to wait till it's available to rent.
Let's tell the people where we're from.
Where are we from?
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Guten Tag!
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, the next in our Fritz Lang series, this time his sort of noirish Nazi big game hunter romance, Manhunt from 1941. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or join us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And if you've ever found yourself in the middle of an accent apocalypse, then let's head to the East End for The Next Reel's Instagram. Hashtag Pony Prize, hashtag Guess the Movie Challenge.
And with that, let's head to the forest in southern England to see if we can find the hole Games Master Stephen Smart has hidden away in, to see if he'll tell us who won this week.
Hey guys, this week's movie was The Colours from 1946, directed by Robert Siodmak and starring Burt Lancaster and Ava Gardner. And this week's winner was At the Other Scotty. So congrats, you are entered once again into the 2016 Pony Prize hat. As always, a new challenge starts on Monday. So thanks guys, and see you later.
And we've got a blot spot, this time on Fritz Lang's M. How'd we do?
I think that we've found a good series for Ben Lott. Ben says, M is another Fritz Lang film that was decades ahead of its time. A brilliant film that gets you to side with criminals and then question their actions an hour or so later. It has you hating a murderer and then feeling like he has been treated unjustly later. Peter Lorre has a speech for the ages, and he expresses the emotions so clearly that I almost didn't need to read the subtitles to understand what he was saying. I just thought the strange moral at the end was an odd way to conclude the film. Your rank 109, my rank 71.
Nice. But
Yes,
he does answer the burning question from last week. What is Ben Lott's Oh Brother block?
That's right. Oh Brother is the one right in the middle of our flick chart, so it's always the first thing that comes up. For him, it's Caddyshack.
Wow.
If Caddyshack were my Oh Brother block, it would be a much easier time.
Yeah. That's right.
Just saying.
All right. Andy, let's do trailers.
So my trailer, Pete, is about a child who befriends a giant, or a giant who befriends a child. Either way, the two of them go on rollicking adventures together. Now, it is not the BFG, surprisingly, but you know how Hollywood
Shock and awe.
Hollywood loves to, well, I shouldn't say Hollywood, but, you know, the film industry loves to pair films together because, you know, what's more fun than watching two very similar films go neck and neck and see who does the best at the box office. So, of course, in addition to the BFG, we have A Monster Calls coming out, which I gotta say looks like a kind of a different tone than the BFG, which, you know, my daughter has read the book, the BFG, and really loves that one, is very excited to see that one. This one, it does look kind of like a child fantasy, but there's a little more drama going on. This one is about a boy who seeks the help of a tree monster to cope with his single mom's terminal illness. It does look kind of, I think the film that it actually most reminded me of was Pan's Labyrinth.
I was just going to say that. That is exactly what I get out of this.
Right. It's got that kind of balance between the fantastical and then the horrors of what the child is going through in the present day, and how kind of this fantastical world is a tool for the child to use to help cope with some of these big world issues. And I gotta say, the tone of it was really something that appealed to me. The cast is great. Liam Neeson as the monster, as the voice of this giant. We've got Sigourney Weaver as Grandma, Felicity Jones as Mum, and it has Lewis McDougall as Connor, the boy that befriends this giant. He was also in Pan as Nibs for the 10 people who saw that movie.
Sure, right.
Of course.
I absolutely remember that.
The tone of this, everything about this looks really fascinating. I was a big fan of J.A. Bayona's previous film. I believe he was Juan Antonio Bayona at the time. He's the Spanish director who did The Impossible and also The Orphanage. I really liked The Impossible. I found it quite powerful. And I think that Bayona very strongly directed the relationship between mother and son in that film. And I was just so impressed by the way that element of the story played out in that film. Here, I think there's going to be an equally powerful, well, I should say, I hope, an equally powerful relationship developed between mother and son here. I think Felicity Jones looks great as this mother dealing with terminal illness, and I don't know, I gotta say, everything about it just got me really excited. What'd you think?
I feel like I saw the trailer for the BFG and Steven Spielberg and all this, and I knew what I was going to get. I knew exactly what I was going to get. I adore A Monster Calls because I don't know what I'm going to get. It's a monster. There's some ancient mysticism to it. Liam Neeson's voice is fantastic, but the tree was not given away in the trailer. I love that. There's a bit of a nice secret to it. And so I feel like I'm in a position to really get a nice gift out of this film, as a result of the solid restraint shown in this trailer. So I'm really excited about it.
I guess for me, the question is, with the BFG, I know I can take my kids to that one. This one, I don't know. I don't think my son could go. I feel like it's probably too heavy and dark for him. I think my daughter could probably handle it, but it's one of those ones where I feel like, I may want to just kind of test the waters a little bit with it first.
Yeah, the tagline on the poster you haven't seen a film like this since Kingsman. So,
terrible. You're terrible. Anyway, this one opens up here in the U.S. October 14th. It actually starts its release in Spain, October 7th, and it plays around the world through Germany November 3rd is the last release date that's listed right now.
Mine, well, it's a bioethicist's dream, Andy. I'm talking, of course, about Morgan. Morgan is the story of a corporate risk management consultant who is put in the position of having to decide whether or not an artificial being's life should be terminated. This is a being that was made 100% created in a laboratory. We get a nice little bioethics lesson in here. It also looks pretty darn thrilling. There's bloody handprints, requisite bloody handprints on a glass door. There's freaky voice through a vocoder. And there's a lot of really, really stark top lighting. This was directed by Luke Scott, and I haven't seen anything that Luke Scott has directed. It looks like his first major feature. He did an episode of The Hunger and Loom, a short film, in 2012. He has been involved in a lot of other projects.
Well, you know who he is.
I don't.
He's Ridley Scott's son.
Oh, goodness. There you go.
That's why all the stuff he's been involved in
is all Blade Runner stuff. Yeah,
Blade
it's all
Runner, right?
Making of and Exodus Gods and Kings. And
exactly.
I'm so, yeah. Well, then that's it. There you go. Now I know. I did not make that connection. So, maybe that makes this all the more interesting. Coming from him, I don't know. But the trailer itself looked intriguing enough that it is something I feel like I want to see. Kate Mara, Rose Leslie. I guess Rose Leslie plays the Beast.
Is that what we're calling it? I guess we don't really know, right? It's pretty like a Monster Calls. They kind of obscure it. You don't really know. I mean, it is just a teaser in this case.
Right. You don't know. It is just a teaser, but I do adore Rose Leslie. You know where we know her from.
You know nothing.
You know nothing, Jon Snow. Yeah, that was her. Yes. And so I'm very excited to see her on the big screen. Anna Taylor-Joy, Jennifer Jason Leigh. You ain't seen nothing since Rush. Paul Giamatti is in this. Toby Jones. It's got people I like. How can you go truly, truly wrong?
I like that she was also in an episode of Locked Up Abroad. Gotta start somewhere.
You gotta start somewhere, Jon Snow.
Just goes to show. That's fantastic. No, I love Rose Leslie. And the trailer for this looks, or the teaser, it really teases. I mean, I really want to see so much more. And I'm very excited to kind of get a better sense of this story, but I love the premise. It sounds very interesting.
We don't have a lot of information on release. September 2nd, USA, September 8th, Brazil, and that's all that IMDb reports. So
cool.
Andy, somewhere in Germany is a man with a precision rifle and the high degree of intelligence and training that is required to use it.
Who are them blokes what are after you?
You won't believe me when I tell you that I've never before laid eyes on any one of them.
How'd you know they're after you, then?
When one's been hunted, my dear child, one develops instincts.
I've anticipated the pleasure of meeting you for years.
I'm afraid I don't know...
Like you, my dear Thorndyke, I've had but one passion in life, and that is the hunting of big game.
I'm afraid of the city. Afraid of people I can't see.
Where can you go if you can't get out of England?
To a place where I can be invisible and they can't. Where nobody else can come near without my knowing it.
Manhunt, Andy. 1941 war thriller. We have British big game hunter Captain Thorndyke is vacationing in Bavaria, and the film literally opens with him getting Hitler in his rifle scope. And that's just where it starts. Directed, of course, by Fritz Lang, written by Jeffrey Household. Jeffrey Household wrote the novel that this was based on. Dudley Nichols wrote the screenplay. Stars, among others, Walter Pidgeon, Joan Bennett, George Sanders. You had not seen this one either, yeah?
No, I hadn't. This was an interesting one. I think I ended up finding it more interesting to watch and reflect on its place in history than I ended up enjoying the film itself. I mean, I had a lot of problems with the story and some of the acting and stuff. That being said, there is something really interesting about watching Fritz Lang's film that even when it's a film that I don't completely click with, it is a film that is still just really easy to watch. This was a very easy to watch film. I found it very interesting to look at. I enjoyed kind of the overall story. It's just some of the specifics that I kind of struggled with.
I'm right with you. I think that the whole the story and the thematic elements and the context of where this film fits in contemporary history at the time, I think it was really moving and important and worth noting. As a film, it falls apart so quickly, and it is not able to stand on the work of its central character actors. I just find that their portrayal of these characters, it just falls apart. So I have trouble. I have more trouble with it than happy fun times.
Yes, I completely agree.
The film, I talk about contemporary history. It's 1941 was it was a big year.
Yeah, there's a little film called Citizen Kane that came out that year.
And 1941. Anyhow, so this film tells the story. It's set in a period of very recent history to the film's release, right? It is set and released immediately before the U.S. enters World War II. It was produced during the period after the Nazis invaded Poland in 1939 and began the Nazi regime march across Europe. And so we're in this really crazy historical, political period that this film exists within. And it tells the story of exactly that time. Right, so we are looking at a film that's telling the story of immediately before the Nazis invade Poland. They are literally hours away from invading Poland at the start of the film. It tells a story of this big game hunter. The very first sequence is him laying down in the brush, looking at Hitler. Did that have an impact on you as you were watching it?
I thought that was probably the most impactful moment of the film. Just seeing that at the very beginning. And then, I don't know, it was so interesting to kind of watch this guy, this hunter, lay down on this cliff, look through his sights. And through his sights, you see Adolf Hitler. He is staring at the man through his sights, ready to take the shot. He pulls the trigger and the gun just clicks. And it's like, wow, that's really kind of shocking. And then he kind of does his little, kind of nod and his little salute, like, it was a good game, old chap, sort of thing. It was really interesting, and it was almost a little shocking that was his action, and I couldn't quite figure out what this guy was doing. I'm like, who in their right mind would do that? Even in the period, I struggled to kind of put two together, and then he kind of changes his mind, and he puts a bullet in, and he lays down, and he's going to take the shot, and of course he gets caught at that point. It was such an incredible way to kind of get a film going. I just wished so much that the whole film could have held up as strongly as that moment did. And I think there are elements that work really well. I enjoy, Keith Smith, played by George Sanders. I thought he was a really kind of sadistic, evil man, and I enjoyed him. For the most part, I enjoyed just kind of the way that his character operated. I did enjoy the whole concept of the manhunt and a lot of the elements that went along with that. But yeah, it was such a strong open, and it really impacted me, and I just kind of wished that the whole film was able to hold up that well.
There are these shows that I see today, right? And Breaking Bad, again, is the one that comes to mind. It's as if the writers are sitting in this room, and they intentionally put themselves in such a compressing, tight, sealed box. They write themselves into this box that you have no conceivable way how they could possibly go anywhere from there. That's the open of this film for me. It opens at what is ultimately a fantastic climax of any other movie, right? The protagonist gets Hitler in his sights. Where do you possibly go from here? I loved that. I am right with you. I love that bit. Apart from Sanders just Plum giving up on his accent in the first 5 minutes.
I think he only has a German accent when he's speaking German. Once he switches over to English, it's all just British again. He doesn't sound German anymore.
Which is it's so stupid in a movie where they make this American sound ridiculously British later in the film. Like, if you're going to commit to accents, commit, you know?
Yeah.
Anyhow, I thought you're absolutely right. He is diabolical, and he is the central sort of focal point for many of the larger issues that this film presents. The use of violence, the use of torture, and that sort of sadism that is channeled through him is just so great. But the film ultimately is really confused, I think, about what it wants to be. And I felt like I was watching so many different movies that didn't really lock in to any one central piece. And it's ultimately falls apart with this woefully poorly articulated love story that makes the film just schizophrenic.
Which I think is something that they felt obligated to add. I think Dudley Nichols, who wrote the screenplay, I don't know if it was a dictate by Darryl Zanuck, who wanted a love interest in the story, but my understanding is the novel by Jeffrey Household does not have that character, or he might meet up with a female who kind of helps him out of a pickle that he gets himself into at one point, but I don't believe that it's any sort of romantic relationship at all. And I think by adding that, it just really weakens the whole thing.
Yes, and I think that the book is more about the sense of survival that happens in the woods. It's much more about sort of that tale of survivalism, and not so much the tale of romance. It's an interesting read. You can download it. It is available. Some of these movies that we've talked about, the original material is not available other than used bookstores. But this one, in fact, is you can get the book on Kindle and check it out. It actually reads really, really well, and I think Household has a terrific style.
Well, it's more kind of a first-person storytelling, isn't it? Like just all from Thorndike's perspective, really.
Right.
Yeah, it seems like an interesting tale to tell, and maybe and I know there was a remake later. I'd be curious to see if there was a way to kind of tell it in a stronger way that actually worked better. But it is very interesting, and I can only imagine in 1941, when the Neutrality Act is still in effect and the U.S. is trying to kind of remain passive about everything, to see a film like this in movie theaters. I mean, we had Chaplin doing The Great Dictator a little before this, and that kind of also kind of skirted things, but it was comedy, and I think he probably got away with it. Here, I mean, I can only imagine that, like, a story being told about people that are so present in all the news of the time, and just what sort of impact that would actually have. I could only imagine how interesting and exciting that would be.
I think about how I felt when, World Trade Center came out and when Steve Jobs came out. Like, I was really mad. Like, felt like too soon, too soon. Here we are. Like, I can only imagine how I would have felt had I seen this movie in that period. Like, such an enormous amount of uncertainty. I just can't put my head around it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The script, ultimately, I mean, I sort of instinctively lay much of the blame for my discontent in the film on the adaptation. Yeah. What do you think? Am I putting it in the wrong place?
Largely, it boils down to the script. I mean, all the problems I have are script-related, well, I should say, and some performance-related, but I think most of it boils down to the script and the way things are written. I think Lang brings a lot of interesting stuff to the film. I mean, as the director, I think that he would have paid attention to the script, but then again, I mean, I think there's generally some story problems in his film, so I don't know if he was the best at catching any of those kind of structural story problems. Yeah, I think that Nichols, he was John Ford's screenwriter. He did a lot of writing for Ford, and John Ford was the one who was supposed to kind of originally direct this before he decided to go with How Green Was My Valley the same year. And Nichols stayed on, and I don't know if Nichols is kind of strictly kind of a studio writer. I kind of get that sense a little bit, but I'm not 100% sure. So I don't know if he was really invested in this or what. It was an interesting script. I think there was some interesting stuff, but for the most part, I just feel like the additions of some of the additional characters, and particularly the real strong development of the female character in here, just ended up kind of hurting the overall story.
We should talk probably about the overall story as we lay out some of these challenges. Because I think it matters in this regard. The story is really about this Captain Thorndyke. He is caught immediately prior to pulling the trigger the second time and killing Hitler. He's taken in. He meets this Steve Smith, and he is taken and tortured. And he is told that he can leave a free man as long as he signs this particular document. It's a document that admits that he was there to kill Hitler under the guidance of
the British government.
Right. And it was going to be their tool to incite action, right, against the British, so that Germany would be able to march on Britain.
And that was one of my biggest problems, is the fact that, there's this document that Keith Smith is desperate to get Thorndyke to sign. And it's like he even traipses across England into the English forests to get him to sign this document. And I'm just like, why don't they just kill him and forge the signature? I mean, it was just so silly.
There is such an amazingly false sense of propriety coming from a guy who has just tortured another man severely. We want the signature to matter, but okay, now we're going to pull out your other fingernail.
Yeah, it just got pretty silly. But then from that point on, they decide, hey, we'll stage this accident. If you're not going to sign this, we're just going to push you off a cliff, which they do. And I was so surprised that they actually pushed a guy off a cliff. I really wasn't expecting that. I was expecting him to escape in some other way. But I have to say, there were some moments in this film with some pretty violent moments where I was really shocked at the lengths that they went to, and that the joy that doctor has in pushing Thorndyke off the cliff was pretty shocking. And I guess it said a lot about kind of the view of the Nazis at the time.
Right. It makes them look both incredibly, violent and incredibly petty.
Yeah.
And sort of unsophisticated, all at once. Stuffed shirts, stuffed suits.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And so from that point on, you really get Thorndyke as he kind of goes on the run, trying to get back to England to be safe away from these Germans. And of course, he gets back to England only to find that he's not safe, because there are German spies after him still. And, he's pretty much in this place where he kind of assumes that, if he goes forward to the government is just going to turn him over to the Germans. And I don't know, some of that, again, just more story elements that I really just kind of didn't think worked very well.
Why didn't that one work for you?
It just seemed silly. I'm like, really? The German government, the British government is going to turn him over for that? I don't know. I don't know if I completely bought that. I mean, I know countries have these arguments about turning criminals over for justice and whatnot, but in a time like this, I don't know. I just had a hard time buying it. I mean, maybe if they're trying to stay on the good side of Germany at the time, but at the same time, I don't know. I just felt like, I don't know. It didn't work for me. It worked for you?
I can see you making that argument at The Hague. I know you have these agreements and whatnot. I think The Hague, the court at The Hague, yeah, they really appreciate people who use such sophisticated legal arguments as and whatnot. No, and I agree with you. I think ultimately it was really silly, particularly when they end up meeting, it's his brother, right, Lord Gerald Risborough and Lady Alice, and it's Lord Gerald who's ultimately saying, "Look, you have to disappear. I can't protect you." When that just felt like the absolute opposite of what I would expect from a head of state.
Right. Yeah. Like I thought that's what they're supposed to do, is protect its citizens.
Right.
But along the way, he ends up running into a little cabin boy who helps him out. Lovely Roddy McDowall in an early role, and a prostitute, or is she, played by Joan Bennett, who helps him out. And and then he kind of, and I mean, really, that's the story, until he kind of, ends up having to confront these guys when they finally corner him.
Okay, and the film ends on him ultimately returning to Germany to do what he originally was doing only as a sport.
In a way, it's a very very much a motivational sort of film that kind of turns these countries. I think the idea of the film from some Nazi haters who were making it was, this whole idea of neutrality in this particular time in the world is a foolish thing to do, and we need to get past that and be motivated, and we need to actively get involved.
Yes, and I think that is an interesting statement that the film makes, and it gets back to these themes, right? This theme of the impossible chase, the relentless pursuit, that the mechanics of the villain, in this case the Nazis, the mechanics of the villain are, we're going to punish you until you can't avoid taking action. And that's ultimately sort of the circle of life of this film, that he's already been punished for the crime he didn't commit, and now he realizes the importance of committing it in the first place.
Right.
Fritz Lang, in terms of his direction of this film, like you said, there are some really interesting things in it. And I think we get a lot of this positioning of the sort of anti-Nazi agenda in this film that I don't know, I almost feel like he missed, like you said, he missed some of the central story problems because he was pretty excited about actually releasing a statement film. As such, I mean, he was banned from the editing room because he felt that he would inject too much of his propaganda in it.
Yes and no. I mean, he was kind of. I've heard a different story as to why he was banned from the editing room, but I believe the reason that, I believe he ended up kind of sneaking into the editing room with the editor and doing the edits, in the middle of the night anyway.
With a separate editor, a different editor.
Yeah, so he kind of got his way with the story in the end.
Which is why that's sort of why I lead with that, because ultimately, like, this really feels like a Fritz Lang film to me, even though it has this weird, clumsy romance that I just don't get, and a lot of story problems. The look and feel of it, the mechanics of the espionage. I love the chase in and around London. When we start seeing the double agents, or I think all of that it screams Lang to me. It's just Swiss cheese.
And this comes at a time, and we've talked about mostly, in fact, all the films that we've talked about are Lang's German films. This is our first Hollywood film that we have talked about with him, or at least the earliest one. We have talked to Scarlet Street, but that happens a few years after this one. He left Germany. He fled Germany at the height of his popularity. I mean, he was the number one German director. He was the most popular one there. He came inevitably to Hollywood, and he kind of, he wasn't a director with the same stature anymore, and he was still trying to get his foothold in Hollywood. And he'd done a few films, a few westerns, a few other different types of films, and was not didn't have the power that he'd wielded. And so, he was kind of trying to take whatever he could. And this film did get offered to him after John Ford passed on it. And I think that he was smart to nab it, because even though it's not a film that I think I connect with that strongly now, I do think at the time he was the right person to direct this, get this guy who had fled the Nazi party, left Germany, and now he is directing an anti-Nazi movie, one of 4 that he ends up directing. And I think that it put him in a good position where, especially after the Neutrality Act ended and, the real anti-Nazi movement in the war, U.S. joined the war and everything, he became a much more popular director because of that. So I think it was a really good choice for him to end up doing this that got him into the places that he ended up going. And I think that there were a lot of things that he did here that led us to like the noir looks that he does later, like all the dark streets, the maze-like feel of things, the fog, just all of that. I think he had a lot of that, just the darkness of the characters and the violence. It is really a Langian film, even if it does have some elements that just didn't quite click for us, at least in the present day.
Well, and I think, to be fair, I think we get a lot of those same sort of streets in M, and I mean, this definitely trends darker But between Spies, I should say, but in Spies, which is what I really liked about it. Like, I feel like you can really see the connective tissue between Spies and this film, even though they, here we are, it was 13 years later, 12 years later. I think it was really, I love seeing that. And it's the stuff I like the most in this film is the stuff that I attribute so directly to Lang. The stuff that I like the least is the stuff that's so easily attributed to, Hollywood, pop culture, entertainment paranoia.
Absolutely. So do you think it was Lang's hand on the trigger?
I have no reason to doubt that.
It seems to me like the most appropriate hand for him to put into the film is the hand on the trigger to shoot Hitler.
Yes.
I just felt like, gosh, if there is a hand of his in this film, that's the one that he should have done.
Because there are a couple of other hands, but they're meaningless hands, like digging in dirt, grabbing for an arrow and a hat. Like they're really meaningless. This is the apocryphal hand.
Absolutely.
Let's talk first shot, last shot. What did you get out of this one? The first shot in this film it's deep in the forest. We are introduced to the forest as the camera opens up, and the last shot. So we're very close. We're in the forest, and then the last shot, we are high above Germany, watching a parachute of our hero fall.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting parallel of the hunt in both cases. The first shot, you've got that nice wide shot of the forest as we kind of truck in and then kind of move to the right before we start dissolving to the ground, and we see the footsteps, and then we dissolve again and we see the hunter. It's just it's that kind of creeping hunting camera that Lang has, as if the camera is hunting the hunter. And here but it's kind of these slow passive movements where we don't really see anything. We don't have a sense of really who it is that we're after. It's just kind of this somewhere in the forests of Bavaria, or whatever the title screen says as we open. We just get this forest, and it's this interesting kind of hunt as we're searching for something, but we're not sure what. And then at the end of the film, we've got that great overhead shot of the parachute dropping down onto the farmlands in Germany, also somewhere in Germany, as now we have a very direct hunt that is going to happen now. Much like what I was saying earlier about, it's that sense of kind of the neutrality versus, directing people to take action. And now we still don't know, we don't know where the prey is anymore, but we're going to now actively go in there to hunt it.
It is so much, I think, also a statement of control. The opening shot in the woods, we are out of control, right? We don't we are at lost. We are lost outside of our element, of our native sort of civilization, and this thing is just overgrown and weeds and everything. And then the final one, looking down from above, any of these sort of height differentials, it is a statement, it's an easy statement of control and power, that we are looking down over you, Germany, and that means we are going to finish this, and that's how this movie is going to end, with a statement of dominance over and ownership and control over what you believe you are doing. I like that. I like that pairing a lot, and I hadn't made that connection until I looked at these two stills side by side. I think I like this first shot, last shot, Andy.
I do too. I think it's a really interesting thing to explore as we talk about these films, and look how a director decides to welcome us into this world and say goodbye to it.
Let's talk about the cast.
So what did you think of Walter Pidgeon?
Oh.
I had never seen him before in a film before. This was my first experience with Walter.
This was not, I didn't find this to be a good film for him.
I really Actually, I take it back. I have seen Forbidden Planet.
Funny Girl? Haven't you seen Funny Girl?
I haven't.
Uh-huh.
I think Forbidden Planet may have been the only film of his that I've seen. And How Green Was My Valley, which came out the same year.
You haven't? You have seen How Green Was My Valley?
No, I haven't.
You haven't? What about Mrs. Miniver? You haven't seen Mrs. Miniver?
I haven't seen that.
Andy, I didn't like him in this movie, but now I think we need a Walter Pidgeon series.
Yeah, I haven't seen much of his. I haven't seen Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. I haven't seen Advise and Consent. He's in a lot of stuff that I haven't seen.
Yeah. Yes, he is. He reminds me very much of a standard stoic leading man, right? Clark Gable and Cary Grant. And I mean, these are the guys who swing in from ropes and then have a bourbon. That's just very much what it felt like. And as such, he was completely a loss for me as a big game hunter. Actually, I should say he reminds me very much of the big game hunter, the British big game hunter in something like Tarzan, that is ultimately lampooned by animals.
Yeah, I think my problem with him, I'm torn if it's him or the script or both. I just felt like he was really kind of casual about everything. He seemed, not too concerned about anything. I mean, it was weird. Like, as a guy who's on the run, who's being hunted, as the title says, he just doesn't seem that concerned about stuff. I mean, I know he, gets roughed up and stuff, but whether he's kind of on the boat when Roddy McDowall kind of helps him out, it's almost like he always has kind of a little smirk on his face, as if he's, behind the scenes, the actor is just kind of like knows it's all just, for a performance. And that was my struggle with him. I just never bought him as Thorndyke. And same thing in the relationship. And the relationship was just so poorly written. And the way that he kind of deals with Jerry and treats her like she's like a child. It's almost like they wrote, they felt the need, because of the censors, I'm sure, to write it as a kind of very much a father figure for Jerry. And he was always, demeaning her as if she was a child, or you silly little monkey, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just, it was weird. And I don't know. I really didn't dig him much in the film. Toward the end, when he finally has that confrontation with Keith Smith and blows up about, yes, I did really intend to kill him, and as this message, blah, 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 whatever he says. I think that was the moment where I finally felt, oh, I have an actor in front of me.
I don't know. There are two things that fall apart for me. First of all, it's a script issue, which is I don't think the gun should have gone off, because I think it would have made his speech at the end much more powerful if we were left with a sense of uncertainty about whether or not he really would have pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
And I think they took that too far in the opening sequence.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I didn't really attribute to him actually pulling the trigger on purpose anyway in the opening sequence. I attributed that to, really because he had been tackled, it just kind of ends up going off.
Right. No, I agree with that. But the fact that and maybe I should say he shouldn't have or we should have seen him reach for the bullet but not actually get it in the gun or something like that. Like leave a sense of uncertainty so we don't know, because by the time he gives that great speech at the end, yeah, of course I was going to kill him. Yeah, I was going to kill him. I didn't know why, but I knew now. That would have been a revelation for us, but we saw it coming from the first moments of the film. We knew that was how it was going to end, and I would have loved to have been able to question that throughout the film. So,
I agree.
Then think about Cary Grant in like Only Angels Have Wings or North by Northwest. Right, here is a guy who can portray that that I'm going to wink and a smile you to death, but I'm going to do it in character, and I'm going to pull this off to a point where you believe that I am in the middle of the jungle, or you believe that I'm running down an airway.
Absolutely.
And this is just one of those where I just don't think he was right for this role.
Plus, he had horrible moments where, like, you want to get choked again?
Yes,
when he's
just
talking to
terrible.
Jerry. It's like, wow, really?
Why would you say that?
Yeah, pretty horrible. Pretty horrible.
Joan Bennett is the central failing of the film for me.
I really like her in the film. I actually like her character. She's just, it's like she was on the wrong soundstage and stepped into the wrong movie. I actually liked her despite her terrible Cockney accent. It's just, she just didn't fit. There's nothing about this character that fit in this film.
Okay, I have to change my perspective then, because I was really stuck on the fact that this was a character that didn't fit in the script, in the story, played by a woman who didn't look like she fit, with an accent that certainly didn't sound like she fit, in a relationship that didn't know what it was, right? So there was nothing about her. Is she a prostitute or a child? Is she Cockney or is she faking it. It was just, what was her reason to be there? I think the film was doing right fine on its own as an espionage, as a thriller, and her part, this romance, was overlong, and it didn't lend any weight to the story. Yeah, see, I was trying to talk myself out of not liking it. I think I talked myself into it even more.
Yeah, no, you did a good job, because I think you're right. There's nothing about it that works. I guess I just like Joan Bennett, and I don't think that she's horrible in the role. And in fact, I think the moment of the two of them on the bridge was a very touching moment. I actually liked that quite a bit, because I felt the connection between the two, and I could tell that she wanted to a little bit more, and the cop kept kind of pushing her back. I liked that moment quite a bit. And also, I really liked that, and this just sounds terrible, but I liked that the film was took it to such a dark place that the villains actually track her down and kill her.
Yeah.
I actually kind of wasn't expecting them to do that. I thought it was pretty kind of bold. I don't know. And it's not like, on the one hand, I was like, well, maybe because she was a prostitute, they felt, the only way to justify the character is to kill her. But I don't think it was that, because with the sewing machine in her room and everything, they were doing everything they could to make her not look like a prostitute. I don't know. So she had some moments that I liked, and I generally like watching Joan Bennett. I think
that's what I was just going to ask you, Andy, because I almost found myself liking Joan Bennett here when I realized what I was really liking was Joan Bennett in Scarlet Street 4 years later.
I like her in this. I just don't think that she fits in this film at all. And you could take pretty much the whole performance and everything and put it somewhere else, and I could just enjoy watching that.
Like Oliver Twist.
Thing. Yeah, it's just so funny. No, but I did like that. And actually, a moment that completely didn't fit at all. But when she was talking to Heather Thatcher as Lady Risborough, that I just really cracked up at that scene. Again, I shouldn't have been cracking up in this film. This was not the film where cracking up was appropriate. But it was a really funny scene. And Heather Thatcher then had the best moment, the best line in the whole movie. She looks at her husband, and she's just like, something. Take him to the Rosas. He's like, what? The Rosas? What's that? Rosas. It's the cops. A dick.
For me, the highlight was her bouncing on the couch when Joan Bennett goes in and bounces up and down on the couch. I think I think Heather Thatcher's look is enough. At that exchange. Yeah. It was really good. And so in spite of that sequence introducing her to the Lord and Lady was really terrific and a great sort of comic break.
Yes. Again, did this film need a comic break? Was it appropriate for this film? I don't think so. But it was like, it's one of those things where it's a part that works, but it's not in benefit of the whole.
All right. George Sanders. Anything else to say about George?
No, I just love him. But even when he's, doing these incredibly, speechifying moments. And I feel like George Sanders ended up becoming one of those actors who, because of his grandiose big performances in films like this, was the sort of person that decades later people would make fun of for, instantly it came to my head the moment in The Incredibles. And I know it's not a spy film, but again, you've got the bad guy who's just like, oh, you caught me monologuing again. It just kind of felt that with George Sanders. And I love that he actually goes, today Europe, tomorrow the world.
I know, that was the highlight.
Somebody actually says that in a movie and he's serious about it. It's not a joke. Oh, made me laugh.
That's pretty good.
Yep. But he's the perfect sort of person to do that. So
yeah. How about John Carradine?
Every good bad guy should make sure to have his carrier pigeons handy. Oh man, another thing that I think might have worked better in the time, but when he sees him and pulls his pigeon out to send a message.
I know.
I had a good chuckle at that.
Pretty good. We do like some John Carradine.
Yeah, we've seen quite a bit of him lately.
Feels like right in a row.
Two of them in our 39 series, and then this one. So he was popular at the time.
Young Roddy McDowell.
Yes, wasn't he cute?
He was.
I don't know what he was doing with his tongue.
I don't know. Did you find yourself trying to do that?
I did, actually. But I could hear the director, well, give him some business to do. Do something so you're not looking like you're overacting. Although he pretty much always looked like he was overacting. It's like, wow, these bad guys have to be completely blind to not see Roddy McDowall with his gawking expressions as he looked at things.
Well, and the really subtle move with his foot to cover the catch with the rug, really subtle, little, practically ballet move.
Exactly.
So it was good to see him, though. I enjoy seeing Roddy McDowall as a young man.
Do you know what his full name is?
Roderick. Let's say Roderick, because that's
Roderick Andrew Anthony Jude McDowall.
Oh, I wouldn't have gotten any of the middle ones.
That's quite.
I could have given you Roderick McDowall.
Quite a name. He also was in How Green Was My Valley.
Another big year for Roderick.
Yes, yeah. This was, he had started working in 1938, so he had already done, looks like about nearly 20 movies by the time he got to Manhunt. So, yeah. Wow. He's a guy who's been in a lot of things.
He certainly has.
Lots of things, including A Bug's Life.
This Carl Ekberg sort of cemented himself in the role as Hitler.
Yeah, he is uncredited, but he plays Adolf Hitler in the beginning of this film. And he continued to play Hitler. He only, looks like, according to IMDb, he had only been in 23 films, none of them credited. They were always uncredited. So he's kind of a bit player, but apparently he had the look. And he played Hitler 5 times in those 23 roles. He played it in Citizen Kane, The Wife Takes a Flyer, Once Upon a Honeymoon, What Did You Do in the War, Daddy? And, of course, this. So, it's
he played Hitler in a film called What Did You Do in the War, Daddy?
Yeah.
Add that to the list, Andy.
Oh, too funny.
Let's talk about production. Darryl Zanuck.
Yeah, good old 20th Century Fox. This was one of those studio pictures. If you go through the credits here, you'll see a lot of names that Fox used on a lot of their movies. We already talked about the sort of contentious relationship that that he had with Fritz,
but apparently it was compounded by a rather crazy production schedule.
Yeah, this was one of those things, like you said, they really wanted this to stay timely. And, the book was written in 1939, and so there was a little time to develop it. But by the time they really got the ball rolling with this thing in late 1940, they just decided to just push hard and fast with it. They actually started production in March 1941, and the film debuted June 13th, 1941.
Whoa.
That is nuts.
Whoa.
So, I guess I can say, you know what? I'll chalk it up maybe to the speed with which they did this production as to why perhaps they skipped over some of the story issues.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's just nutty schedule.
The film actually is the first war film to attract any attention of the Hays Board. The Production Code Administration. And it was about these concepts that we already mentioned, the fact that there was torture, pronounced torture in the film, and prostitution portrayed, intimated in the film through Jerry's character. What is interesting about this, I think, is his memo, Joseph Breen's memo, says that the film is unacceptable on 2 major counts for excessive brutality and gruesomeness, especially during its representation of Thorndike's torture by the Germans, which I think is of note in the actual portrayal of it, that we only see his shadow, this tortured body's shadow, as they're talking to him, which I thought was a really nice way to it was a really nice way to portray it. Anyway, and prostitution, for the indications that Jerry was a prostitute, and in the finished film, the presence of the sewing machine was added to her apartment, again to imply that she was, she was a seamstress, not a prostitute, but really she was much more recognized as a prostitute. With the jacket that she was wearing, she always had this coin purse around her wrist. Apparently, those were, I wouldn't know, but apparently those were things that were associated with prostitutes. But finally, the thing I think that was most interesting in this memo, the story is unlike any story which has been submitted to us in recent years, in that in this script, the Nazis are characterized as brutal and inhuman people, and the Englishmen, or Englishmen, are the sympathetic characters. It resembled propaganda films from World War I, and that a great segment of public thought would object to it as inflammatory. Again, the U.S. had yet to enter the war, and so I think those are really interesting complaints.
I didn't know a whole lot about the Neutrality Act. I knew the U.S. was trying to kind of stay out of things for a while. I didn't know how it was affecting the film industry, and I found it really interesting that they were kind of policing these sorts of things because they didn't want, to inflame any situation. And so it's really interesting that they were really dancing around the issues here and trying to make sure that, it wouldn't offend people in a time when Nazis were, crushing Poland and just doing horrible atrocities. So it's very interesting that this was kind of the way that the world was shaped at the time, and I can only imagine being in the movie theater at the time and seeing this film, and just what it would do for just kind of the mentality of people watching it, and the debates that it would spark, like, oh yeah, we should definitely go jump in and then fight those Nazis. No, are you kidding me? We don't want to turn this into another world war. It's just such an interesting thing for me. So I mean, I love that about this movie. It's just such an interesting, it holds a very interesting place in history.
Especially because we were still so close to World War I, that this is just a crushing kind of display of bad timing.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that part of it. And again, I think that's what makes the film interesting to talk about. Cinematography, Arthur Miller is he's one of a handful of really, really great classic cameramen.
Yeah, they say that he's one of Hollywood's most accomplished lighting cameramen. He was mastered black and white. Clearly, we see some amazing shadow play in here, a lot of great fog stuff. He seemed like the sort of DP that would work with Lang really well. Although, oddly, I don't think they ever ended up working together again. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why that is, but yeah, unless I'm missing something, just looking through their filmographies, I don't see any other connections between the two of them. But yeah, I mean, How Green Was My Valley? Again, another person who worked on that film. The Oxbow Incident a few years later, and Gentleman's Agreement. He did a lot of great stuff, working all the way into the early 50s. And he's just one of those guys who just shot a lot of films that looked great. Very busy in the 30s too. I mean, he was just from the early days of cinema, starting in 1909, he had been shooting stuff. So pretty solid director of photography here.
How do we feel about Alan McNeil, editor?
It's the whole battle in the editing room sort of thing. I'm curious about how these different people kind of saw the film coming together, if different people were kind of editing it around the clock. It's like you'd think that they would realize that other people were working on it. So I'm curious about how that works. How
do they get away with that? How do we get away with a story like that Lang and Gene Fowler are in there editing the film at night? What is Alan doing during the day? I must be losing my mind kind of an event? Is this it's like a bad sitcom.
Yeah, I'm really curious how that works. That's one of those stories I'd love to learn a little bit more about, to really try to figure out exactly what was going on there.
But I think he does good service. However this got edited, I think he did good service. Let's just say Lang did good service to his own vision in most of the film.
Yeah, I agree.
And there is that great sequence on the bridge that I really like. And there are a number of sequences where he's trying to get rid of her, which is just ridiculously condescending, but the look of those sequences is really good.
Well, and even the train, I mean, the whole train chase, I thought that was wonderful, and the kind of the hiding in the tunnel, and just the way that was shot, the blackness of everything going on in that tunnel as Thorndike is running from the tall man, Mr. Jones, John Carradine, and he's hiding in the darkness, and just the way that there's no music. It's just it's just the editing and the pacing of these actors as they kind of are hiding in the shadows and fighting, and it's a pretty shocking death, but it's also taut. I found that whole sequence just kind of riveting and very energized, considering how paced it was.
And I think pacing is a great point. I mean, the film, interestingly, it's an hour and 43 minutes. How does that compare to last week's? Do you happen to remember how much that was? Because the first two were over 2 hours.
Yeah, the restored version of that is nearly 2 hours, about 1 hour and 50 minutes or so.
So this is pretty close. But this one, in terms of overall pacing, it actually felt pretty good, particularly when Joan Bennett wasn't on screen. Sorry, I don't mean to keep turning the shiv.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
No, but it is paced well. I do agree, and I think that's something about the film, and maybe it's the nature of a manhunt. You kind of got this journey sort of story as your character is moving from place to place. But no, it's paced well, and I think the music helps at times. I think Alfred Newman's score can work.
I don't.
Well, here's the thing that I'm going to tell you that I think I did hear them talking about on the commentary. Alfred Newman has a bit of a thriller score in this film that does work. That being said, they also use some, I don't know if it's canned studio music, but kind of the romantic threads that kind of weave in and out with Jerry's character. I think it's just kind of, it's almost like what you now have is just kind of the stock library music. It's that for the studio.
It was just repurposed over and over and over again. A Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square. And if you know anything about A Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square, you know that the only version that is appropriate to listen to is the Manhattan Transfer version of A Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square, and all other versions, including that used way, way too much in this film, is sacrosanct.
It's funny that Manhattan Transfer is the version that you have to listen to. Honestly, I don't know if I've ever heard that song, but I definitely could tell...
Did you just diss on Manhattan Transfer? Do we need to do a Manhattan Transfer series?
Yes, I think we should. I'd be curious what that series consisted of. But no, I mean, I think that there are probably some standard cover versions of the song that might. I mean, honestly, I had never heard the song until you brought that up. I had to go listen to the song and then try to place where it popped up in the film, but. I don't know. I guess I don't care enough about that song to really be too concerned about it. But yeah, I mean, it's the difference between a strong composer and library music that you have to use because you can't pay somebody to write everything. When you're making a film in 3 months, I guess that's
you take what
right?
you can get, right?
Yeah.
How did this one? I know it was made again immediately after as a radio drama. The Philip Morris Playhouse in 1942.
Yeah, they did that a lot with a lot of films where the actors would come back and be on the radio and stuff. But yeah, then there was a 1977 TV movie, not called Manhunt, but actually called Rogue Male, made more directly from the actual source material, starring Peter O'Toole as the hunter, John Standing as Keith Smith, Alastair Sim, and Harold Pinter. And, I don't know too much about that, but Peter O'Toole in a TV movie, I don't know, it really piqued my curiosity.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
Yeah.
Overall, how did it do?
This is, I gotta say, some of these movies are pretty frustrating with how little out there, how little information there is out there for numbers. Again, just like M last week, there was nothing for this film. It did open June 13th, 1941, and I did read that it was moderately successful. I know people really kind of latched on to the whole idea of this a film so current, and it got some good reviews and everything. Moderately successful is all I found, unfortunately.
All right. Well, we should probably rank it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel, everybody, and log into your account there, and you're going to search. You can find this one. This one shows up. Just search for Manhunt, and there are many. Pick the one in 1941, and there you know the drill. You're going to rank it filmo off filmo, and we'll see if it can get past your Caddyshack block or your Oh Brother block, whatever your block is. Let's see if you can get it into the top half.
I think the key with this manhunt is you have to remember this is man space hunt. It's not manhunt.
That's right. That would be a very different thing.
Well, and I think normally the word is manhunt, as in one word, like when the police are on a manhunt.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that this is manhunt. It's kind of with that space in there.
Right.
Anyway, first up, we've got the block. We've got Manhunter or Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
It's going to stay on the bottom half, Andy.
Yes, it is. Oh Brother for me too. Manhunt or The Sandlot.
The Sandlot. Yeah.
It's a tough one because I respect this film for the place that it has in history. But I just didn't like it all that much.
Yeah, it's not one I'm going to seek out and watch again.
Manhunt or The Hudsucker Proxy?
Oh, a Hudsucker, absolutely. I can't wait to see what you say. You know you can't say Manhunt.
I'm actually going to say Manhunt. Watching the opening moment of this film, like I think there are moments in this film that are strong, and it is a Fritz Lang film, and the problems I have, I have problems with both of these films, I guess is the bottom line. I have serious issues with both of them. Manhunt, I have some more compelling things going on there for me.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
1, 2, 3, paper.
Rock.
As it should be.
Okay,
fine. As it should be.
I'm not too worried about that one. Manhunter, Indiana Jones, and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I'm going to say Manhunt.
Yeah. Manhunt or Yee, a 1 and a 2. I am saying Yee for sure. I'm curious where you're going to go with this one.
I can't believe this, Andy, but I'm going to say Yee.
Hey, look at that, Pete.
This may be a first. I'm growing.
Oh, that's so great. Manhunter, Christmas in Connecticut. I'm going to take a little Christmas.
Yep.
Manhunt or The Blob, Steve McQueen.
The Blob.
The Blob for sure. Manhunt or The Hound of the Baskervilles. A little Carradine duo here.
I'm going to say Manhunt.
So am I. There we are, number 228. Definitely on the lower end of our chart. In fact, I think it might be safe to say this is the lowest of our Fritz Lang films that we've talked about so far.
It might be safe?
I think it is safe.
I think it's safe.
Yeah.
Safe. This one, this just didn't hold up. I thought we were climbing a mountain, Andy. I was so excited about last week's film that I thought we just were going to keep going up and up and up, and I couldn't do it. What does this do for your Letterboxd, however?
Letterboxd for me, 2.5.
2.5.
Yeah, I mean there's still some strong Langian stuff going on in here. You've got that fantastic open. There are some just some moments. I mean, like the train, the battle in the train tunnel. I mean, there are moments in here that I think are really strong. If you could divorce it from all the problems the script has, so I'm right at 2.5. Overall,
the film holds together so poorly. It is so many films going on at once in here, and I was at 1.5.
Wow.
I would give it a solid 2. 1.5, and it falls in the lower 200s. Like, that feels about right to me.
That's fine. I would have been higher than Hudsucker for me, so I think 2.5 is fair for me.
All right, that's fine.
All right, so 1.5 for you, 2.5 for me. There you go.
There you go. Where do we go from here?
We are going to finish up this Fritz Lang series. I gotta say, man, there's been some really interesting films, even if we haven't liked them all that much. Really interesting films to look at here, and we're going to be finishing with one that I think I enjoy it. I think that it's one that for Lang was not was kind of more of a do it for the studio sort of film, but it's Ministry of Fear, and that's one that I enjoy. I'm looking forward to talking about that one and finishing up the series with it.
I'm looking forward to that too. That's another one I have not seen, and so I can't wait. You think I'm going to like it? What's your bet?
I don't think you'll like it as much as M. That's all, but I think you'll like it more than Manhunt.
Are we going to take odds on my star rating?
3.
Okay, all right. It's you heard it here. I'm going to rate it a 3 according to Andy. We'll see if he wins, if he behaves well.
Excellent. Yes.
Until then, Andy, I think you know I got to go to bed.
But Pete, you promised me a pin for my head.
Andy, Amazon giveth. I've got a 1 star from our friend Walter, left on fairly recently, June 8th, 2015. He says, fritzed out on this one, and you'll notice the play on words.
It's that's why Walter is a strong Amazon critic.
You know, I should say, as an aside, I'm no foreigner to these kinds of plays on words. Because while you may never say Andy Andy'd out on this one, you could possibly get away with Peter petered out on this one.
He could, yeah.
So I get Fritz.
For Pete's sake, just do it already.
I'm just saying, some of us are saddled. You get me.
Did you get it? I threw one at you.
Oh, I got it.
You weren't even paying attention.
Come on, man. Dreadful script.
All the time.
Dreadful script, dreadful direction, annoying non-stop music, total amateur time, waste of great talents like George Sanders, John Carradine, and Walter Pidgeon, who sleepwalks his way through this imbecilic film. Bless you, Walter. Bless you.
Well, I've got a 1 star by Lynn Alexander, who says a clunkhead survives somehow. My goodness, the stuff the movie makers showed in this film in the name of drama stretches the disbelief. I like Walter Pidgeon, but in this film he is a walk-on, supposedly a great white hunter with a lifetime of experience hunting big game. This guy is a complete clunkhead. In this movie, while those who hunt him are hot on his heels, he slams doors, grabs a girl, and makes her scream. I guess so the Nazi will know where he is. He goes into dark, deserted, dead-end places with his pursuer 10 steps behind him, and even in the wilderness makes as much noise as a crashing herd of elephants. Yes, I exaggerate, but each of these situations happens in the film and completely killed any belief in the big game hunter. As others have noted, the plotline is a bit clunky as well, where, for example, the story jumps from the guy dying in a hospital to bailing out from a British bomber over wartime Germany without the pilot's authority. The other area of disbelief was in casting Pidgeon as an aristocratic Englishman and then putting him into scenes with British actors who could carry the role. Why does Hollywood do that? By the way, as the Cockney street girl, Joan Bennett was superb.
You are kidding.
The problem, as I see it, is in the director's vision of a good story gone wrong. And why did I feel that Pidgeon merely mouthed his lines?
Pidgeon was supposed to be British. Sanders was supposed to be German. And Bennett was supposed to be Eastender.
That's right.
That is ridiculous. It is all ridiculous. Thanks, Amazon. It is hard to believe we have been having in-depth conversations about movies since 2011.
You are telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
Season 5 had some great adaptations, like our Meryl Streep Oscar-nominated performances series. We covered adaptations like Kramer vs. Kramer, Sophie's Choice, and The French Lieutenant's Woman.
It's a real Sophie's Choice between those books. You see what I did there?
Yeah. And I don't think it's quite at the level of a real Sophie's Choice.
We also did Snowpiercer for our Bong Joon-ho series, adapted from the French graphic novel Le Transpersonnage. Man, I love that movie.
We had our 2-part 1939 series that included adaptations like Gone with the Wind, Ninotchka, The Women, and The Hound of the Baskervilles.
A number of those 1939 movies, like Goodbye, Mr. Chips, also tied into our recent 1940 Academy Award Best Picture nominee series.
Our Naughty Children horror series had creepy adaptations like The Bad Seed, Village of the Damned, The Innocents, and Children of the Corn.
For our Hayao Miyazaki series, we talked about his take on Lupin III with The Castle of Cagliostro, plus his own The Wind Rises.
Some great listener choice picks too, Viridiana and The Great Escape.
And for our David Mamet Wright series, The Verdict, The Untouchables, and Glengarry Glen Ross.
Plus, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang from our Shane Black series, adapted from Brett Halliday's novel, Bodies Are Where You Find Them.
Dive into the sources for all of these at thenextreel.com/originals.
Every book you buy helps support the show. Check out thenextreel.com/originals today and find your next read.